Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today we're going to be talking about children and learning in children with our guest, Tom Tatum. Tom, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sevag. Before
we start, I'd like to take this opportunity and thank our volunteer crew that makes this production and every production possible. We couldn't do the Spotlight, the San Joaquin Spotlight, without you. Now, Tom, welcome again to the program.
Thank you.
We've had some interesting conversations off camera, and we've had some interesting conversations when I toured your location, but you are involved in, and actually the executive director of, something called the Friends of the Center. Is that correct?
Correct.
What is the Friends of the Center?
Friends of the Center is a group of people who have committed themselves to raising monies for us to treat children with learning challenges, both evaluate and treat them for free.
Learning challenges. Talk about what learning challenges are.
Most people think in terms of the learning challenge child today being a child that has an attention deficit disorder, the classic reading disabilities, auditory processing disabilities, kids that just really learning's difficult for them to do. One of the important things that we do is we look at the child as, are you delayed or do you have a disorder? And if a child has a disorder, we can look at that problem, that disorder, identify it, treat it, solve the challenge, and make them successful.
What's the difference? I mean, you said delayed or a disorder. Talk about the difference between the two.
The difference between a delayed child and a disordered child is a delayed child oftentimes is just simply slow. They're not able to meet the milestones at the same rate that another child will meet them. Might be a 2-year-old child who's progressing well, but may only be operating at an 18-month-old level. Whereas a disordered child is going to do things out of order, out of place. They're not going to hear things the way you and I hear them or see things the way you and I see them. So they'll learn, but they don't learn in the right order, and so they fail. Or they can't pay attention at the right time, so they hear the same commands that you receive, but hear them out of order, and so they don't follow the directions very well.
When a child has a disorder, parents oftentimes will blame themselves. Is there a way to fix that disorder?
Absolutely. I would say most of all to parents is don't blame yourself.
And you see that at the center, I'm sure, correct?
Yes. Children are children. Children are going to develop the way that they are. The important part for a parent, I think, as we talked earlier off camera, was love your child. Just love them. And if there's one thing that you can do that will help a child develop, whether he's delayed or disordered, is spend time, love, and direct.
Now, before we get into deep questions and conversations, let's talk about this center some more. So if I have a child, or a cousin of mine has a child, or anybody I know has a child with a disorder, do we bring them to you?
Yes. Just simply call our number, 498-8393. Contact us through a number of different websites, friendsofthecenter.com, FresnoLanguageCenter.com, and there are application process that you can submit. We maintain a waiting list of about 10 or 12 children. We take children on a first come, first application basis. So it takes about 3 to 6 months for us to work through that list for a child. We evaluate them for free. We develop a care plan specific for that child and treat them for free.
So you're testing the child. I mean, talk about some of the tests. I know you do a lot of things over there, but how do if I bring my child to you and I think my child is not developing like a normal 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, what are some things you would do?
Sure. The first decision I would make is the child delayed? And there are a number of developmental milestones that we can look at and developmental testing tools that we can use, much like a ruler. And I would hold that ruler up to your child and say, if he is 14 months, is he 14 months long? And I would do that first. From there, I would then look at, is he developing the right kinds of things, or does he have difficulty hearing certain things, or paying attention to certain things? And is that kind of slowing him down and causing him problems as well? That allows me then to predict and use some other testing that will look very specific at some learning skills, fix those skills. I like to use a supporting example. If, as an example, you're a soccer player and I'm teaching you to kick a soccer ball, and you kick the soccer ball pretty well, you don't kick it very far, you're just weak. We need to work on being stronger. If you go to kick the soccer ball and you don't plant your left foot and you trip and fall, I need to teach you on planting your left foot. That's a disorder kind of approach to language. Fix the problem, the child plays beautifully.
When a child is delayed, are there times where, like, let's say that the 24-month-old is at a stage where they're 16 months. Is there a way they'll catch up later on? I mean, a lot of times I could see parents say, oh, my child's never going to get there, and look down on themselves.
Many children who are delayed need help. The most important thing to probably understand is you can just use a very simple rule. At 1, a child should have 1 word. At 2, he should have a 2-word sentence. At 3, he should have at least a 3-word sentence. At 4, he should have at least a 4-word sentence. If you could just kind of use the 1, 2, 3, 4 rule of number of words of sentence by age, that's a pretty good guess at whether or not a child is delayed.
How do you do it? I mean, you're talking about a lot of services, and you haven't mentioned any costs. Is there a cost, and how do you do it?
We have just an incredible group of people who have both benefited from what we do, appreciate what we do, people like you who invite us to get our story out. We just have an incredible group of sponsors and benefactors who support us. We've been doing this for almost 21 years in downtown Fresno, and we are just a very fortunate group of people who love to help kids.
You're a small place, but you make such a big impact. Do you run into people that have never heard of you?
Absolutely. About 10 years ago, the Fresno Bee ran an article about the clinic, and the title of the article was "The Best Kept Secret of Fresno." I kind of like that idea because we kept a waiting list and allows us to really kind of stay at the size we have. We've tried not to outgrow our finances, which is a struggle for lots of nonprofits. But it's also allowed us to be word of mouth for the most part. And we just have an incredible group of people who support us because we've helped their families.
I'm going to ask you a tough question. It goes to some of the things we've been talking about. But, are you seeing more delays or disorders with children that come from single family households? And here's why I asked the question. I mean, my wife and I had our first child.
Congrats.
And thank you very much. And it's the best thing, but it's also exhausting. But that child has my wife, that child has me, that child has grandparents. So there's that support system there. Now, flip that coin. If I was a single parent, there's only so much I can do. So in your experience, what are you seeing?
First of all, you have a very blessed child.
Thank you.
To have a huge family. With children of single parents, it's really hard. Parents only have a certain amount of time and energy and resource. It's a tough, tough job. And I think one of the things I would encourage anyone as a community member is if you know a single parent, just wrap your arms around them, love them, support them, take that kid, be as much as you can. It's a very difficult job for them to do. Overall, we're going to see a young child who is of a single parent family just struggle. There's just not enough time and energy and effort. Being a single parent's a tough job. We talked earlier, I'm not sure how you do it, even with 2.
Yeah.
But as a single, they're just amazing people.
One of the other things, you read studies all the time about talking to children. I think the one that makes me smile all the time is the one where you play Mozart for the child. But, talking to the child, will that help in your opinion?
Absolutely. You should talk to your child all the time. I think one of the most important things for us with children is to think about what is appropriate for a child. And music and art is almost always appropriate. I spent the afternoon with a young child, and we just did a diary about his weekend, and we drew pictures of alligators and wrote stories about what he did. I think the most important part, the most important answer I can give you there is be appropriate. Talk to a 2-year-old as a 2-year-old, be imaginative and fun, and talk to a 9-year-old as a 9-year-old. Try to stay at their age level, challenge them to think and to play, and try not to be older than they are.
So fundraising is important, obviously, to what you're doing because, the cost factor and it takes time to help these children. You have a cycling event coming up. Tell us about that.
Yes, we do. We have the Tour de Oaks bike event coming up September the 27th. It's $35 for adults up until September the 17th, and $40 after that up to the day of the event. We have a 2, a 10, a 30, and a 60-mile distance. You get a t-shirt, get a great buffet. If you love to eat, you got to come to our buffet. Our riders say it's probably the best of any event that they do. And it's just a great, beautiful ride. We ride, the shorter event rides from the Cook-Hallowell Center out to Friant Dam. The other longer distance, the 30 and 60-mile distances, go to Prather for the longest distance and at the Millerton Lake Store for the 30-mile distance. It's a beautiful, gorgeous ride. If you're a bicyclist, it's a great time of year to ride.
Now, are you at your own pace, or are you expecting people to keep up with the pack? Because I'll tell you, if I was in this race, I'm going to be in the back because I'm going to be a slow rider. Whereas you, I could tell you'd be in the front.
It's a fun race. The 2-mile race is really a parent-child kind of, I shouldn't use a race, it's a fun event. Our 2 miles is a family event. Children and families ride the 2 miles. We're not about speed, we're not about competition, we're not about how fast you can do it. We're all about just kind of enjoying it and having a great time.
Talking about children now in our community, what are you seeing? I mean, I know this is going to be a tough question for you to answer, but are you seeing that we have a lot of children in our community that are delayed or that have disorders?
I think we live during a very interesting time. I think that one of the things I see less and less happening with children is the decrease of playtime, outside time, creative, imaginative time. From a speech and language standpoint, speech and language allows us to predict what's going to happen, allows us to talk about the exciting, creative part of things that happen. I think that we really need to work at playing with children again, talking with children again, interacting with children. A child's development is not a parallel thing, it's an interactive thing. And if there's any challenge I would give any parent, as we've talked about, interact, play, have fun, laugh.
There is some words that are used all the time in our society. ADD, ADHD. Are you seeing in the children that are coming to your facility, are you seeing that these play a big role in them, or do you think sometimes we mischaracterize what children have?
I think we have an increase in the diagnosis of both attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Part of that, I think, is that we have a decrease in play. It used to be we'd get out and burn all that energy off and have lots of fun, and we'd come in tired when the street lights went off.
I remember those days.
Yes, that means we're both getting old together. But those were days when we were able to get out and do things and burn off some of that. That's important. That's terribly important to a child, to have both uptime and downtime. And I think that where we are today, we do not offer kids enough of a chance to just kind of run and play and be a kid.
You have a great job in that you're always working with children. But the flip side of that coin is it could be tough, because sometimes you may have children that are maybe not as developed as other children. Why do you do what you do? Because it's rewarding, but you can also have that, sadness for some of these kids.
Absolutely. Children to me are just simply a delight, whether it's a delayed child or a disordered child. They all giggle, they all laugh. They all love the moment that you interact with them. Children are about adults loving them, and I love the idea that adults should be about loving children, and I just simply love kids.
Parents. Now, a lot of parents, until being a parent, I didn't realize how tough this really is. It's great, But there are things, it's a whole new world, a whole new world. For parents, do you also talk to them? Because, I mean, you have a lot of knowledge you can share.
If you go to one of the websites that I talked about earlier, there's a section there called Tom's Talks, and I talk a lot about parenting and helping kids with disorders. I think parents have a really hard job today. And I think if there's a role I can play as a therapist with parents is a role of support, to listen, but also to challenge, play, enjoy, tickle, laugh, be creative. Life's really not as serious to a child as it is to an adult, and all of us need to be kids again. And you're going to learn that with your child. You're going to learn, you know, it's kind of fun to make mud pie.
Talk about the households where both parents are working. I mean, how does that factor in? Because we're seeing now with our expenses more than it was 50 years ago, 20 years ago. Now we're seeing that both parents are having to work to support the family, to pay the bills. How does that play into what you're doing? Because I could imagine that it may make your job a little tougher.
Makes our job a little bit tougher. One of the interesting things, if I could digress on that topic just for a moment, when we first developed the clinic back in 1991, we really expected that we would serve the delayed, the single parent, the kind of out of society picture child, if you will. We really have served the dual income family since we opened, and it's a challenge for the dual income family, dual working family, to raise a child in today's environment, both financially and practically. We really spend a lot of time, again, talking to parents about, you have a short time with a child, play, enjoy each other's company. Try not to be too tired. It's awful hard to work a 50-hour work week. But one of the real downsides is we live in a very parallel world. You and I work side by side. We talk on the cell phone side by side. Be there for your child. Put the cell phone away. Turn off the TV. Don't live a parallel life to your child. Live an interactive life with your child. Too often we live a parallel world at work. We carry that home. Don't carry the parallel world home. Be there, be present.
What is your website again for our audience members who just tuned in?
www.friendsofthecenter.org or www.fresnolanguagecenter.com.
The event that we talked about earlier, the cycling event, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Tour de Oaks, September the 27th. You can register through our website or through active.com. It's a fun event. Come to eat, come to ride bike. We have incredible sponsors who help us out to do that. It's going to be the Coke Hallowell Center, beautiful center if you've not been to that center before, and a beautiful ride out Friant Road and then also out to Auberry and to Prather.
New parents out there, what can we do to ensure that that child has a fighting chance? Because, you know, as this child gets older, life is going to throw a ton of obstacles their way, starting from the day they go to preschool to the day they graduate from college. So what can we do to help them through that process?
I love that question, because we always talk about success and we want our children to succeed. That's such a critical part to what we are. But I think I would add today, let them fail. Because sometimes failure is a great learning opportunity to pick them up, dust them off, wash them off, love them, hug them, tell them it's okay. But then do the important part in failure and do the important part with punishment. Too oftentimes we punish a child and we're done. After a child fails, after a child has been punished, pick them up and talk about failure. Talk about punishment. What could we have done better? What a great way to teach a child.
That's so interesting. I mean, we're learning as we go. New parents learning as we go. Is there a time where you think we stop learning?
We just talked earlier. As of July the 15th, I'm a grandfather of 6. And
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Almost the same time you became a father. You never stop learning. Talked to my oldest son today. We talked about some neat things, talked about children. I think when you stop learning, you probably should just kind of fold up your tent. We can learn so much from each other, and it goes back to kind of that answer about the parallel world. We need to live interactively. Your great-grandfather, your grandfather, whoever's around, knows so much that you don't know, that I don't know, that we can learn about. Everybody has a story. The question is, will we listen to their story?
How smart are kids today? And the reason I ask this question is when I'm driving down the street, I hear sometimes the parent blasting the music, and in the music there's all kinds of profanities. And when you ask the parent the question, they say, oh, he's or she's young, they won't pick up. And this is why I'm asking the question, how smart are kids today?
They're a whole lot smarter than you think they are. They also learn all of those words very, very quickly. I love a quote from Art Linkletter. Art Linkletter said that media or television creates a veneer of sophistication. So a kid may know that four-letter word, he may know lots of words he shouldn't know. He doesn't really know what they mean. So there's a veneer of sophistication. And I think for children today, the more we expose them to the real things of the world that's age appropriate, the better off that kid's going to be. They don't need to know some of those other things. Let them play. Let them enjoy.
So what advice would you give to parents who are looking for, schools or looking for places for the child to go to spend time? I mean, what advice would you give?
I think I'd almost say go to Coke Hollowell Center. If you haven't been out there, there's beautiful walking trails. There's descriptions of the animals and the wildlife. There's grass to play in. There's water to wade in. There's tadpoles to chase. I think I would tell you, get your child back out into nature. Get your child back into walking down the field and finding that little blue flower that's hidden in the meadow, to looking up and seeing the falcon or the hawk take the squirrel. School is a good thing. It teaches some wonderful things, but there's also a big piece that we're missing in just being observant about the world that we see around us. How often do we drive home, we get home, and we don't even remember a bit of what we drove? I would encourage, school's a good thing. I would look at the education of the teachers. I would look at, do the people really truly care? Do they love? When they punish, do they pick up and talk about why they punished? But I think I would encourage a parent today to think more about their role in exposing their child to being in the outdoors, in the real world, in the interactive world, than anything else.
What signs should I be looking for? And when I see what, should I bring the child to you? Because, as a new parent, or even as someone who has a lot of kids, they may not know, they may not see the signs that, I don't want to say show trouble, but they may not know the signs to why they should bring the child to your place.
You're going to laugh at my answer. If you're worried, bring your kid. Parents are so smart. Parents really know that something's not right. Use the 1, 2, 3, 4 rule. 1 word, 1 year. 2-word phrase, 2 years. 3 words, 3 years. If the child's not doing what he looks like he's supposed to do, he doesn't look similar to his peers, he's not performing as well in school, something just doesn't feel quite right, I would tell parents, you're much smarter. Parents know when there's something's not quite right. Don't wait.
So
the earlier you start, the sooner I get to fix them.
Well, the gut. So if my gut says, there's some, even though I can't put my finger on it, there's something just not right, then you would say bring them in.
Absolutely. I'm free, so I don't cost you anything. My professionals, my colleagues cost a little bit more. But either way, we invest so much in our children, it's a dollar well invested. It's a dollar that you're not going to be unhappy. If you go see a professional, you're worried about your child, and a professional says, your kid's doing wonderful. Best $200 you ever spent. Professional tells you, your child's doing terrible, your child needs help. Best $200 you ever spent.
That is very true. That is a very true statement.
We never give parents enough credit. Parents are smart. If your intuition tells you something's not right, do something about it.
We are running out of time this week on the program, but quickly, kids who come from homes that speak multiple languages, studies always say, good or bad, I mean, you hear studies about this all the time, good thing to speak two languages?
Absolutely. Don't forget the culture. We talked about this before. Don't forget the culture. The language is beautiful and it's important, but don't forget the culture. The culture is just as important as the language.
Lastly, tell us how people can find out more about this great center.
Go to www.fresnochildhoodlanguagecenter.com. Read about us. Our website talks about what we do and why we do it. Go to the Friends of the Center, which is the bike event that I'm here to talk about. It will also link you there. But know that we're available. And if you have a child who has a language problem, you can look in the yellow pages. You can Google Fresno language disorders, and we'll pop up, and other professionals will pop up. We're there. It's kind of at your fingertips, if you will.
On that note, you have been listening to and watching San Joaquin Spotlight on 90.7 FM, KFSR Fresno, and CMAC Television. Our guest this week has been Tom Tatum. Tom is the Executive Director of the Friends of the Center. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Sevag.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. To the volunteer crew in the studio behind the scenes making this happen, thank you. Thank you to our audience members watching and listening to us. Tune in next week to a new edition. Are we good?